You must be careful about the words you use, or the words you allow to be used in your house. Words are things. You must be careful. Careful about calling people out of their names, using racial pejoratives and sexual pejoratives and all that ignorance. Don't do that.
It's time to talk about it.
Pull up a chair and take a seat.
We're serving up recipes for life.
With Hampton University's Dr. Richard Mason and Dr. Tamara Williams.
Welcome to the Sunday Brunch.
This is Dr. Tamara Williams.
And this is Dr. Richard Mason. And welcome back to Sunday Brunch with the Good Doctors.
The good doctors.
How you doing this week?
It's been a busy week, but it's been a great week.
Yeah.
The fact that we're here means it's been a great week.
What I say, another day on this side of the dirt is always a good day.
It's the only place I want to be right now.
Exactly. So you have to choose to make it great, you know.
On purpose. There's people that I talk to in the mornings when I get up. I have a cohort of people that we reach out to, maybe share a scripture or something like that. And a lot of times that's usually what I'm telling them, have a great day on purpose, because we have to wake up and decide that's going to be a great day. There's a lot of days that try to predetermine for you that it's not going to be great, so you have to make a different decision. Like, I see what the world is saying is going to happen today, but let me tell you that it's going to be a great day.
Exactly. You have to choose that, because as I always say, life is going to keep on lifing.
Life be lifing too.
Woo. But guess what? I start my day with Jesus and some coffee.
I do Jesus. I do coffee and bacon. I feel like a lot of things are better in my life after bacon.
Oh, trust me.
On purpose.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And I think we talked about this once before. I've discovered a new location for my grilled cheese and bacon sandwiches.
A couple shows ago, you did share with us and we said before you mention them again, we need sponsorship, because the way that you was laying.
I'm not gonna say who it is again. I'm not gonna say who it is. But if you see me in there, just mind your business. That's all I'm gonna say. If you see me in there,
orders multiple meals,
just mind your business. That's all I'm gonna say. But you're right. That grilled cheese and bacon.
See, anytime we say bacon now, that's where you.
If you have not tried a grilled cheese sandwich and put a little bacon on it, trust me, it will bless your soul. Make you feel good all over, just warm inside.
It lets me know we need to hurry up and get to the buffet, because you were talking food. That means you're hungry.
Yes.
This is Sunday Brunch, but the meal that we're going to have today is a very serious kind of conversation. We don't always go serious on the show, but we always talk life. And we always talk about things that we think will be helpful for people, so they know that they're not out there by themselves. And so today we have one of those conversations. I really think it's going to be a healing conversation for many people. I think it's also going to be an opportunity for some people to reach out and get some help. And to get some assistance.
Exactly. Because that's what this show is all about.
Yes, indeed.
We want to have those conversations that we typically don't have at the table that need to be had. Families just go through life and just allow life to happen to them, and sometimes not even realize that others in the family are dealing with very similar issues, not even realize that the family next door may be dealing with the same issue, or your coworker. And so when we are able to have these discussions at the table, our goal is that someone will hear something that will spark something in them to grow, to learn, or to be better.
And also to validate what they're seeing, because sometimes people suffer in silence. They think they're the only people who have ever gone through something, or there's something wrong with me that I'm going through this, other than to acknowledge that part of this is being a human. And if you are living, you're going to be going through something, getting through something, hopefully.
Exactly. And no one's immune. No one's exempt.
No one I've met.
No, exactly. Talking with people sometimes, of course, coming from church, and their mindset is, the Lord is watching me, He's keeping me, and that's true. But that doesn't mean you're going to be exempt from challenges and problems.
And you can pray about things, for sure. And you should pray about things, for sure. But you still have some work that you have to do. And sometimes we're forced to do some of that work.
Exactly.
We don't get to pick and choose who comes and goes in our life all the time.
Exactly.
And the circumstances in which they come and go.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I said this is a deeper conversation today. Our last conversation, we were talking about birth, life at one end, and this end we're talking about life too. But what happens when it comes to that end? But you got to still keep living.
Exactly.
And that's the hardest part. When you create families sometimes and someone checks out of that family, did they really check out? They're still a part of the family, how they exist in the family. What do you do with all of these feelings? And when you're young and you have to then address, and you have kids that you have to take care of. So we have quite a heavy conversation today.
Yes.
We're going to need some food.
Right. How do we get through while going through?
And not just get to the point where you're surviving, but we're always at this table talking about we want people to thrive. You don't want to just be in survival mode for the rest of your life. That's exhausting.
Yes.
Always feeling like there's a target on your back. But how do you get that noose from around your neck to where you're actually breathing?
Exactly. Well, I'm on my way to the buffet line.
Yes.
See, I saw a little quiche up there and looked like got some bacon in it, so I'm going to go get some
If
of
you
that.
see one with spinach, holla at your girl.
I got you.
Thank you so much.
I'll be right back.
At the table with us today on Sunday Brunch, we want to welcome to the table Monica Quiones.
Hello. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It feels so good to be home.
I'm telling you, welcome back to your home by the sea in a sense, you know, and the fact that you're from Hampton, right?
Yes. Yes.
And tell us what high school you went to. I know.
I went to the best high school ever in the
I
Hampton
won't
Roads
co-sign
ever.
that. I won't co-sign that. However, it is in Hampton.
The Hampton High School.
All right. You can't crush a crab.
So, let's talk about how this topic fits with you. Obviously, we brought you in to have this conversation about life, death, and becoming a widower. Isn't that how you say that, a widow?
Yes.
A widower? Okay.
Yes.
A widow. Okay. So, talk to us a little bit about your experience in that regard. You didn't wake up one day and say, "This is my life, Jesus. This is what I want."
Oh, no, absolutely not. Yeah. I was actually angry when it happened.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll go back a little bit. My husband and I, we were married for almost 14 years. And so less than 90 days he passed before our 14th wedding anniversary. He was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer, so I'm always talking to others and educating others about the type of cancer it was. It was called cholangiocarcinoma. And so it starts in the bile duct, but what people don't realize is the bile duct is that little tiny organ. It's nestled in between the pancreas and the liver. And so by the time we found it, it had already spread to the liver. And so it was just, shock initially. And then trying to figure out, okay.
How long had you been married before he got the diagnosis?
So we had been married 13 years.
Okay.
Now, we found out the diagnosis right after our 13th wedding anniversary.
Okay. And at that time, you had little people.
I did. So we were a blended family.
Okay.
So at the time, memory. I got to think back, but but at the
That's
time,
a whole conversation. Now, sometimes when we go through things, we have to block certain things. We repress certain things to get through things. Yeah.
So my bonus son, he was, I believe, he was actually 24 at the time of the diagnosis, and so my daughter was actually 12 at the time of diagnosis, and my son was 8 at the time of diagnosis. Yeah.
You had a blended family. So in the blendingness, was your son, your oldest son, staying with you too, or was he out of the home at that time?
He was out of the home at the time.
Okay, that makes a difference as you start to go through loss. And then, so as you get your diagnosis, so that seems like that was like less than a year.
It was.
From the point of, so at that point, his body is going through things, you're going through some challenges. Things happen in the home. You have little kids and you have someone who is older. Tell us a little bit about that.
It was challenging because I'm a natural encourager anyway. So to watch my spouse, going through something so hard and me having to step up and just be the encourager, I'm like, nope, we're not talking any of that. We're talking faith. We're standing on God's word. And that's what he started to do too. And so, but the only thing that I wish he had allowed me to do, and I just respected his wishes, he did not want the kids to know. And I'm like, in my mind, because at this time we had moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. So we weren't around family.
When you say kids, you mean even the one that's in the 20s?
No, he wasn't. He didn't move to Charlotte with us.
Okay.
He
know
was,
what I'm saying? He didn't want him to know either?
No, he didn't tell him initially either. Nope. It wasn't until a few months later. So anyway, that was the thing that got, because I already know if kids are not, ignorant, they're very smart, intelligent, and they can see if you're constantly not feeling well.
Yeah. So he was having symptoms of having cancer. So he was sick. He was tired. The fatigue was there. He may have been throwing up from the treatments. He might have been ill. And so they're noticing, like, you're not able to come places, be places, do things that you would normally do. And they're asking why.
And so what he ended up telling them probably 6 weeks later was, well, I'm just having some, issues with my stomach, in my stomach area, but I'm going to be okay. And I just was like, no, Lord, but okay. I'm going to respect my husband's wishes. But I'm like, this is not going to be a good thing. So what ended up happening. So that kind
of prevented you from being able to deal with some of the things that were occurring as well, and to get the support maybe necessary that you need from surrounding people, because it's almost like it's a secret.
Right. But fortunately, the oncologist's office, they had connections with therapists. Okay. And so I was assigned, free therapy. So that's amazing. That's where I went to pour out and just release my emotions. But what ended up happening, which was the inevitable, I told my daughter, I was like, go get the mail for me. So she went and got the mail, and when she pulled something out and she came in, she was looking sad, and she handed me the mail, and then she just ran upstairs. And I was like, what was that about? And when I looked through the mail, it was something from the American Cancer Association in there, addressed to my husband. I was like, I knew it.
Nothing goes on in the dark.
Nope.
It doesn't come to light.
Right.
Oh, my word.
So
and at that point, she had been reading for a long time.
And so finally, he sat, both of them down. And, they took it pretty, I guess, as well as to be expected,
What was that conversation like? Was it, I have this as a concern, and did he have any conversation as to what was anticipated to happen or what they could expect? Or
what he told them was he was fighting, and getting treatments. And then we started to travel. So we traveled out to New York to Sloan Kettering Hospital out there. That's a large cancer treatment center to, run tests and get treatments. And it was, the back and forth, with that. And so with that, the kids had to stay with family, as we traveled and did what we needed to do for him. And then it wasn't looking good, so they put him in a clinical trial just to see what they could do. Because most people, if they're diagnosed with it, they call it terminal, like it's terminal illness. But I never wanted to receive that, because I know a God that I serve, my Father, right? So standing on the word. And he was too. And matter of fact, one time the doctor came in and it wasn't a good diagnosis. This was January of 2019. He passed February 2019. So he came in and Mike was like, nope, I'm not receiving what you're saying. I'm standing on God's word. So God is a healer and he has the final say. So if that's God's decision, then okay, God's will be done. But I'm not going to lean into the negativity, which was very very brave, very commendable for him to still hold on to his faith at that point. Yeah. And so,
Was that helpful for you? Or would you have wanted to have different conversations?
I think it was helpful for me in the sense that I saw his spiritual growth. Because I can go back to a time when we first got married. It was not there. We went through some stuff. We went through some stuff. and
you remember that?
Yeah.
Okay, so got you. And that's the conversation about marriage. People think that every day you wake up that you're just madly in love with this person, but it's really about the commitment that you've made versus the feelings that you always have. So you we've been through some things. Yes, it was a real marriage.
Yeah. And then, around about year 7, we actually started doing the work. He was doing some work, I was doing some work, and saw God intervene, and just the marriage started to get better. And so that was a blessing in itself. So for him to say at that point, it's just evidence that his walk with God had been strengthened. And so that was helpful for me. So, but yeah, so I remember we went to the doctor, because by this time, for the clinical trial, they put him at Duke Medical Center in Durham, North Carolina, which was closer, but it's still 2 hours away. But we went for just a follow-up after they did this major surgery on him December 12th of 2018. They put this hockey puck size.
And the fact you have these dates in your head is like...
Yes.
Yeah.
Life altering.
Yes. So they put this hockey puck size device in him. So they had to go in and they just did move some organs, took some stuff out, tried to where the chemo could go directly in that device and to go straight to the tumors to try to shrink the tumors that were outside of the liver. And so he was doing great. And then probably... I want to say maybe 3-4 days later after the surgery, his body started to change in the opposite direction in which we did not want it to go. And so I'm like, okay.
He started to reject those treatments.
Yep. And so I was like, still, still his encourager, still his, cheerleader, still standing on God's word.
How are the kids handling it at that point? Are they more aware of?
They were more aware, and by this time, of course, like he, I think he shared it with, my bonus son knew by this time, so he knew when he sat the kids down. Then he made a call to him too and told him. So they were struggling a little, because we had to keep being up and down the road, and they had to keep being with other people. Because
he's not working probably at this point because he's...
No, he wasn't. And so I'm just like, okay, we're going. And then I knew that it was tough with the kids because, I could see it on their face. Yeah, I could see it. Yeah. And they were trying to be brave,
And because you guys were not having that type of conversation about what's finally going to happen, they had no way of probably expressing that fear other than just what you saw.
Yep. So that's where we were. January, then February, he got I remember it was February 5th. I remember all of this because this is the month,
Yeah.
So February 5th of 2019, I took him, for a follow-up at Duke. We get there, and they were like, wait a minute. They couldn't get no blood. They couldn't. I'm like, well, he's been, he's not dehydrated or anything. You should be able to get blood. Nope. Took his pressure. It was so low. Low to...
Almost non-existent.
Right.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, you need to call next of kin. We don't know if he's going to make it. I'm like, what? That was so at the time, that was a wake-up call for me. So then we
Because you're
started.
no longer stuck in this faith bubble of you trying to be the encourager of something that you wish to happen. You're actually having to face the reality of what is currently happening.
So right then,
No more denial.
right. And it was a blessing, and they were saying, the nurse was like, I haven't seen anything like this, and the doctor either, because he was still coherent. Like,
Really?
his blood pressure was that low, but he was still coherent. So we were having conversations that we should have had months ago, but you know, deep conversations like what you want to do, where you want to, you know, where you want to be buried, where,
So
you know, it was all of that,
It
those
transitioned
conversations.
Right.
in that moment. Is it because of what they said that forced him to? Because if they're saying you need to call the next of kin, you're saying he's coherent. He heard them
Right.
say that. So do you think it's that reality check that forced him to have those conversations with you? Like,
Yes.
no, we need to talk about this now.
Yes, I do.
Because it's a difficult place to be.
Amen. Most of
Yeah.
us are afraid of our own mortality or immortality. Really.
Right. And even when you go into hospice care and they start talking about plans, you know, that's always a touchy subject. I mean, you talk about healthy people now that won't make a will.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is very scary
Yes.
for people not to do that. Yeah.
You've been on that side now, so
Yes.
you can see like what happened. So here you are now starting to plan and ask him what his wishes are because you had not had that conversation before.
No. And so, you know, and here I go calling people to come. So everybody's coming to Charlotte, you know, coming from Jersey, coming from Texas, coming from Hampton, coming from, you know, 7 cities around here, Tidewater. People just coming, showing up, family and friends. And it was a blessing because then I really had that support around me. So that was just a true blessing to have everybody there. But then it was like February 11th, something switched. It was like he looked better. He started sounding better, like himself, like his voice was back to being, I always call him Mike. Mike's voice was back to being how it was supposed to be before. All of the, you know, it had gotten that little gurgle sound. And his skin was beautiful. Like, and I'll never forget it. And we had the best conversation. He was in the hospital still. But it was just me and him in there at the time. And we had the best conversation. Like, just like good old times, you know? And I was like, you know, I look back on it now and I'm like, God allowed that to happen for me, you know?
You needed the closure conversation?
I think I just needed, I hadn't had any peace. Being a caretaker is not easy. And I was just ripping and running, taking care of him, taking care of the kids. Still, you know.
You hadn't had a chance to really think about how you felt about things, to sit in your own body and your own feelings, and that gave you kind of like the space to do that.
It's like I rested, like there was a peace there. But then the next day, it went back.
All hell broke loose.
Well, it just went back to his sound was gurgling sound, and they were like, well, there's nothing we can do, so we're releasing him. And I'm like, well, what are we supposed to do now? So I don't even want to get started on our precious healthcare system. I'll leave that for another day.
She said, we're at the table, but we're gonna remove that from the table.
Right.
We just had a conversation last week about some health disparities, and we were looking about how that impacts women specifically. But absolutely, it's African Americans in general have some issues and concerns with the healthcare system. That's why we need more people like us to work there so that they can be more aware of the things and issues that we have.
Absolutely.
And so during a time like what you had, absolutely, it was like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
From a medical model, the challenge sometimes is just they're looking at science. They're not looking from the emotional perspective. You know, it's a matter of this is it.
Yeah.
You know, I often share with folks when my mother was going through this, you know, I remember one of the doctors coming in talking about hospice, and she, to me, she was selling hospice like a timeshare. It's
Right.
like,
What?
listen, no, we're not going to do this
Right.
today.
Right.
You know, so, but yeah, that's the thing, you know, working on the bedside manner of our medical personnel and not necessarily delivering the science, because we do understand you have to deliver the tough news sometimes, and they have to protect their own emotional stability as well, so
They
that they're
become
not wrapped in.
desensitized because they see it day in and day out. And if you become emotionally attached to losing your patients, you won't be able to focus on the next patient and the next patient and the next patient. So we know why they do it. But when you're sitting in the midst of that in that moment, you don't care anything about all of that. All you know is, sir, why are you pushing me out this chair? Did you just see what happened? Or, sir, I need you to be more clear. Repeat this one more time because I only got a part of what you said because I'm stuck over here. And my feelings about you're telling me something I did not wish for, something that I did not pray for.
Right.
You know, something that I saw coming, but I wanted to pretend that it, we have a hard time dealing with ends.
Right.
Beginnings and ends, really.
Yeah.
Right.
But these ends, not being in control of things, this is not when you envision. When you get married and you're walking down the aisle saying you're going to spend the rest of your life with someone.
Right.
And they say for goodness and, bad, rich or poor, and sickness and health, you don't really visualize the sickness aspect of it. And you guys, even though you have been married for almost 14 years, you were still very much a young couple. So, you imagine growing old with someone.
Exactly.
And so now you're having this conversation where you're having your old person conversation the day before.
Yeah, it's like really the month of, because after he was discharged February 12th from Duke, we came home, Charlotte, and then I was just like, he was like, oh, let's try Cancer Treatment Center of America. Let's see what they can do for me. I'm like, thinking in my head, like, okay, babe, we can try. But in my head, I'm just like, I don't think that's going to work. And lo and behold, it didn't. Once I sent all the records there, and they had a whole team of doctors that it was the one out in Atlanta. And they called me back, and it was like, it's, because it wasn't safe enough for him to travel by plane. And it definitely wasn't safe enough for him to travel to Atlanta. From Charlotte. Even though it wasn't a long drive per se. But his health condition, it was too long. So we couldn't, there was nothing.
Nothing you could do. You couldn't fly him, you couldn't, and you couldn't drive him.
And so that was a tough pill to swallow for me. And so I'm going to therapy, and I'm like, at this time, I'm like, do you want to talk to the person I've been talking to? He was like, no, I don't need that. I was like, okay. And so I remember the week of, so it was that Sunday, we had one of his cousins was over with one of their friends, and they watched football, I think. Don't quote me on that one.
What was his team?
Oh, Steelers.
Okay.
Yes. I'll be wearing my jersey tomorrow. Okay. But so he after they left, I had went upstairs making sure the kids was, settled for bed, and then I hear something fall, and it was him. He fell on the landing of our stairway. I could not get him up. So I had to call him, the cousins back over. They helped get him up and stuff. Lo and behold, that Tuesday, we went to the doctor that was there in Charlotte, just because at this time, they were giving him something in the IV, I guess, to help just
with the pain and just help him along.
And so we get home, and he fell getting out, like, the car, and it was cold. And I remember it starts, like, the snow flurry started coming. I'm like, what? God, what? And I couldn't get him up, so I had to call paramedics, and they came, got him up, and, took him to the hospital. And then when that Wednesday morning, when I got back to the hospital, the doctor had called me. He was like, we reviewed everything again. There's only 1% of his liver that's functioning. You're like, but I still didn't want to hear that. You know what I mean? And I was like, no, well, God, this is, if you're going to do something, you need to do
Like,
it now.
is the time.
Right,
Now
right.
is the time.
But, so anyway, he ended up going into hospice. They had the stuff at our house, set up for hospice at home. But that Friday, the nurse was like, when she came and checked him, she was like, his blood pressure is just not right. And if he needs assistance, we don't work on the weekends. So he needs to go into the actual hospice house.
Right, not home, because we won't be able to get to you.
Right.
Right.
So he was reluctant at first, but then he went. And I remember we stayed there. It was just me, him, and the kids. And we stayed there. Me and the kids stayed there for a long time, late. And then I was like, I got to get these kids home and fed, because we weren't supposed to stay there anyway. So did that. Next day, I remember I was about to eat some waffles. I won't say the name because they're not paying me either.
Exactly.
Do you still eat them now?
The kids do.
And the reason I ask that is because as adults, and we go through trauma, there's certain things that we link to that. There's certain things that we associate to that.
Right.
And seeing that we're in this month of February,
Yes.
all these things are coming back to you at this time. So you like, I'm playing with them waffles.
Right.
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 But yeah, it was that call that I don't know if either one of you've ever gotten a call like that.
Yes, and it's not
But-
a good thing.
They were like, yeah, your husband's breathing has changed, so you need to get here right away. Now, the interesting part is, and I believe God did it like this too for a reason, the hospice house that was closest to us, they were all full. So we had to go 30 minutes out of our way to get to the next hospice house. So I'm driving and I'm like, get the
Trying
kids.
to get there.
Yes. I'm breaking all kinds of speed laws.
Yes.
And I'm praying, and I remember...
Your breathing is changing too at this point, yes.
And the kids were like, why are you driving so fast? I'm like, I had nothing. I said, we just got to get there. We got to get there. And I'm praying in my mind. And I remember exactly after I prayed my prayer, because I said, God, please, don't take my husband. Let this be the day that you heal him completely. Just heal him completely. And I'm thinking completely means on this side of heaven.
What we asked for. Okay. Yeah.
And so it was 10 o'clock on the dot when I finished praying in my head. I looked at the clock. And when I got there, it was a little after 10. I flew out literally, I don't even know how I got out the car. Me and the kids.
The door can still be open to this day.
And I'm running, and the kids is running, and I get in there, and the nurse was like, I'm sorry, he's gone. And I was like, no. And I was trying to run around the nurse's station to get to his room because it was right behind their station, and my legs just gave out. And I just hollering and screaming. I will never forget the screams, too, of the kids. It was just, and that's another thing that I want to say about healthcare, too. It's like, they should have pulled me to the side in a room, closed the door somewhere, not have told me that in front of my kids so that I could have gathered myself together first.
I don't know how you gather from that news, though, Ideally, they came in and they saw you come into the room. They were trying to catch you before you got to the room to tell you what you were about to experience.
Yeah.
And so when the news hit you, it literally hit you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I lost it.
Amen. Yeah. Rightfully so. Let's take a pause for that cause. A lot of times people think that there's a right way to respond to that, but that was your natural. I'm about to scream right now. You can feel it, and you can sense it at the table. That energy of the despair that comes along with the finality of understanding that, and the guilt I can imagine that you felt about you didn't get there.
Right.
Even though you couldn't drive any faster than you were driving, you still he did. You get to the point. I wasn't there. Yeah. And now the kids are like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You didn't tell me this was what we were driving into.
Yeah. Yeah.
So whereas you didn't have any understanding, which you kind of had an understanding where you were going, they had no understanding of
Right.
what was actually happening.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
How are they?
They're okay. I mean, now I want to say all of us are doing, pretty good. I would say we all have our ways that we grieve still. Because grief is just, it comes in waves.
That's the conversation right,
Right.
there. It doesn't stop.
No. 'Cause I'm saying,
Because you
how,
made it through 1 year.
right. Well, how was it starting out, in the beginning? Because that's the piece that, one, we have to identify it's okay to be not okay.
Right.
So walk everybody through your process of how it was in the beginning.
Honestly, I was walking around in a fog, probably for the first year.
That's
Fog. Fog.
Exactly.
Because I couldn't, initially, those first few months, I mean, mind you, the funeral was here in Hampton. I had to go back to Charlotte by myself, just me and the kid. Where I didn't have, I had friends there, thank you, God, for having friends that I had met
It wasn't
there.
your family.
Yeah, it was
wasn't
not the family.
Your real emotional support.
Now, I'm grateful for his cousin that was still there, and I had two other cousins, but they were a little further out, so not as close in distance. But that's still not the same as mom, dad, brother, sister-in-law, and just my aunts and uncles and cousins that were
Your
like my
crabbers.
siblings.
Your
Right.
And, just God has blessed me with some good people in my life. I'm grateful to say, but they were just all either here or just spread out. Like most in Virginia, But then I had other families spread out, so it was like Charlotte, that pocket in Charlotte. I'm like, this is tough. So
And you're no longer in Charlotte.
no, I had to go back to Well, now I'm not.
Right.
Right. So that was a journey too. So, but back so the funeral was actually March. So I get back March, reality really hit. I'll tell you what really struck me is that I'll say his name because y'all know him. So, Pastor Kevin Swan. So I'm a member of Ivy, and the funeral was there. And so when he was preaching the eulogy, and I don't know why it didn't dawn on me till then. I just was so emotional. But when he was like, saying that I was a young widow, and I was like, what? I'm a young widow? And I'm like, oh, I am a young widow. Like it was then when reality, because even with planning a funeral, you're still going.
Yeah.
You're going,
You're in a different place mentally because it's, hey, I've got to get this done. It's a part of, you're just operating on just from the mere fact of, hey, this is a part of life, but you're just doing it, going through the motion, and people are holding your hand. At that point, from the funeral director to Angie at the church,
Right.
just kind of walking you through the process. This is what we're doing, and this is what has to be done, and processing
Even
everything.
you too. You brought me the tissues to the
I
car.
know, yes. It's a process.
It's a
Yeah.
process, and it
Yeah.
doesn't stop. And when you really sit in it is when it gets quiet, and everybody else is asleep, but you're up because you're sitting in the reality of things have changed.
And one thing I want to say too is I felt uncovered
That part.
because literally your husband is your covering. And so when we have them, your spouse right beside you, that's the husband and the role that they have, and then they're gone. It's like, I understood, yes, the husband's the covering, but when he was gone, it was like,
felt it.
yeah. I felt like I had no covering. Just out here. Now, I know now, of course, God's with me. God covers me.
He kept you. He kept you.
Because there were some days I didn't want to get out of bed, but the kids needed to get to school. So I'm grateful for my son's teacher at that time.
Oh, yeah.
And I tell her that because we still keep in touch from time to time. I'm like, you were such a blessing with all the traveling and stuff. But then after the passing and we came back, my son was late for school every day.
Yeah.
Because
The struggle of getting up
the
and getting
strength,
into
yes.
the routine and pretending that you can still exist. And then we still haven't even touched the fact of these babies lost their daddy.
Right. Right.
They, you know, and then
And it was tough for both.
yeah, and
Well,
then
all of them.
The
All
first
of them.
Father's Day that rolls
Yes.
through, you know, all those little things that people just take for granted.
Yeah.
You have a boy, so you know if he's engaged in sports or any of those aspects, you know the things that you think of a father being present for us. I can imagine.
So yeah, it was tough. That first year was really, really tough. I think, and I grieved, but I think what happened that second year is like it was. People say, "Oh, you made it through the first year, so you should be good."
Oh, the devil is a lie.
No, it's like that second year, around my birthday time. So his birthday November, mine's December. His birthday was tough, but my birthday was worse. It was like I could not
Celebrate yourself.
no, because I was just used to him doing, you know, not so much all the grand gestures, but just the little things, just making me feel
The
very
body
special.
heat in the bed. Go on and tell the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's another thing I want to talk about too. Like when people are thinking about picking a partner, you really do need to think about the sickness part. Like, I know people will sometimes joke at weddings and it's like, oh no, in health and health or in rich and rich or, you know, but reality is those vows, those concrete vows, they still stand. So if you can't handle a person when they're at their lowest, I don't care if it's a physical illness or what it may be. It's like, why are y'all together? And some people don't get that. They don't get it. But there's no way in the world that I would have left my husband at his lowest, but I have seen it happen in some marriages where one of the spouses gets sick and the other, they can't handle it and they out.
And you're right,
It
people
gets
don't think about
complicated. It gets
Yeah.
complicated for some people. Some people, what they may not share in those circumstances is when they needed that individual. They bounce out. You know, like they didn't have that covering, they didn't feel that. And so they may not openly go into that. People don't always make the best decisions when
No.
it comes to relationships.
No.
But you know where you stand when you're in need. That's when you really see who is who and what is what.
Well, people go into marriage with a wide-eyed and bushy-tailed mentality.
Yeah.
That part.
It's you know, the relationship is great. I think people are more caught up in the excitement of being married, but really not understanding what does that mean. And I know when couples come in for counseling, that's one of the things we talk about. You know, we go there in terms of the sickness and in health, for richer or for poor. You know, what happens when she drains your bank account? What happens when he gets sick? You know, how do you plan to deal with that?
When someone loses a job.
Right.
And because those things happen. And so
Yes.
you're talking, then COVID happened. See, I'm looking at your time frame.
Oh,
In
yeah.
my mind, I'm mapping all of these things out. So you said you felt uncovered because your husband then left. And then we go into COVID that very next year.
Yes.
So now we're trying to adjust to all these other things. You're really feeling unsafe. The kids are still growing. I mean, they have really grown.
Yes, my daughter is first year college.
That's what I'm saying.
Wow.
And those, those little things that, you think about, oh, he would have loved to see
Oh,
this
yes.
or she needed. I want you to share before we run out of time too, things that you've done to move through this. Because yes, that first year was tough. Second year came around, it was tough. But you're not staying stuck in it. We're having this conversation, but you've done some things in the process to be able to continue to have conversations.
I actually sought therapy. I keep going back to that because, yes, I'm a Christian, but Jesus and therapy.
Yes.
Jesus and
Do we
therapy.
not have that conversation? all the time?
Exactly.
Yeah, because you can't necessarily always pour out to your family and friends because they
They
just
got
don't-
stuff.
Yeah,
That cup have runneth over.
right.
Yeah.
But going to a therapist and actually doing the work, like don't just go and not listen. Do the work. But so that therapy, of course, seeking, friendships, your family, friends, but self-care.
Found out it's not selfish.
Oh no.
Yeah. A lot of
Self-care.
people feel guilty about taking time out, and when they're grieving too, and they have kids and other people need things, some people feel bad about having to take that time out, but you need it.
Yes.
So you found that therapy, self-care,
Yes,
has been
self-care.
helpful.
I accepted it. I had to process all my anger. And then I had to accept it. So some people might say, oh, memorialize the person, and everybody, do their different things. But for me, it was just a moment of true, real acceptance. Like, he's gone. He's fine. We're here. And I'm going to be okay.
When did you
Yeah.
realize you would be okay?
Probably, I started writing a book, believe it or not, in 2019, December of 2019. And I wrote it because I couldn't find other books to help me through my process. I'm like, so I just started writing in my rawness. So it's not the best of, time for me, but I found that since writing the book, it's been so helpful for other people. But the process of writing the book was therapeutic.
Yes.
You were journaling.
Right.
Your understanding and working through the process, speaking out loud, essentially, which
Right.
you needed to be heard.
And that's huge. And people don't understand what happens. You kind of hold in all of those feelings and emotions and stuff like that. And when you don't have a therapist to talk to, you don't write those things down, and you're not getting those things out, your brain and your feelings and emotions are just swimming around, And I always liken that to just going to the bathroom and not flushing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's how messy of a situation it can be.
I see
And
it as drowning.
Exactly.
When you have it's like you have your head is under that water and you just can't even get out to spit it out. Like,
Yeah. So that was awesome. In your own self-care of writing this thing out, you've been able to even bless someone else to see, because now guess what? It normalizes this stuff, because of course, being a mother of three, the mindset is you got to be strong for the kids. You have to be strong, when the reality is you are feeling like you are stretched out under the world, and the world is just rolling over top of you.
Absolutely.
because in my mind, I'm like, the therapist, the clinical person in me is like, how is the older son handling this?
Right, right.
Does he feel like he is a part of the family?
Yeah.
All those little aspects of, like, my father's gone, we were a blended family, there's so many nuances that come to that. And he has little siblings. He has more memories of their dad than they do. So, my word, it's a lot.
Oh, yeah. A whole lot.
A whole lot.
Yep.
So tell us about the book.
Okay, so it's called Instant Single Mom, This Was Not the Dream. And the reason of the title for Instant Single Mom is because that was reality.
You became a single mom
Yeah.
instantly.
Yeah.
Less than a
He
year.
took his last breath, and I became an instant single mom just like that.
Just like that.
Yeah.
Financially, emotionally, all of those things. It then became all on you. And then
Right.
you're already in another state, essentially, than
Right.
your family. So,
And what's different, a little different from divorce, because I know divorces can be like a grieving process too, but the difference is that you're processing that a little bit more, because it takes time to get divorced, especially if you have children involved. So, but becoming a widow, it's just instant.
Whether
You're
you
just
want to or
thrown
not.
into this status
Right.
yeah.
within a second.
Whether
That's
you
it.
want to or not,
Right.
this is where we are.
And so, yeah, it's been a journey. And I can't believe this is year 5. This will be 5 years this month. And I'm like, wow. And I have started a nonprofit now. to
Yay.
help
Tell us
widows.
about that.
Yeah. So it's the Widow Poised and Redefined Project, because you don't have to be this old lady to become a widow. There's a lot of
Yes, indeed. There's a lot of women in the military who are very young widows. It happens all the time. COVID made some people into young widows. Violence in general will make people into. There's many ways that people become widows.
And I have found that we need each other. So the purpose of the nonprofit is, one, to provide community, but also to provide education, support, advocacy. Another thing that I'm big on, and I praying that I can get some things changed, is that when you become a widow, and you're a young widow like I was, still young, but you know, but you get from the Social Security Administration, here's your little sum of $250.
What am I supposed to do with that?
Buy groceries, I guess.
Two bags. Wow.
Yeah.
So just the advocacy, one, of educating wives, too. Because statistics show that women become widows at a higher percentage than men becoming widowers.
Absolutely.
And so just the education point, making sure you got stuff in line, like, you know, making sure, are you a beneficiary on these bank accounts? You know, you might have a joint account, that's cool, but what about those other accounts that you got?
Is their name, or they have their name on the property. Those
All
type
that
of
stuff.
things, yeah.
Is your house in a trust? Because yes, wills, yes, but trust, your house needs to be in a trust, because a will just says this is what you like to happen. That don't mean they gotta abide by it. So trust protects that it's gonna be. But anyway, I'm not here to talk about, because I'm not a financial services advisor.
No, but you are here to have that conversation of what happens with widowers and widows,
Right.
And that's the real conversation, and having that support group so that people know it's not, you don't wake up to become a widow, or widower. You know, that's not your idea. So sometimes you need someone who has walked that path to understand. We often have the conversation about death, unless you've lost someone like that. You often don't understand that. So before I lost my mother, I didn't really understand that loss in the way. I knew people who had lost their mothers, but it's different when it actually happens to you. And it's supporting to have other people who have walked that walk.
And the other part is for taxes, filing your taxes. You can only file qualifying widower for 2 years with the IRS. I'm like, so I should be able to file qualifying widower for as long as I'm a widower. Like, once I get married again, okay, but if I'm a widower, I'm a widower. Why just 2 years? Why just 2? So these are the things that I'm advocating for, to be changed for widows, because it's necessary. And if you're a young widow too, and if you're not in the military, because the military does a lot for widows, young widows. But if you're a civilian, you're not getting anything that they're getting. So it's like,
where's the support?
Right. So that's what I'm advocating for. You know, getting the word out there, getting the message out there to let people know the real deal and what needs to be changed.
And I heard you say that you're not married again, and that's a whole nother conversation about how people transition and then blend families after a loss. And if you still have young kids and now you're trying to integrate into another family.
And you really got to be careful. You got to be sensitive enough to, before you even bring somebody around your kids, be sensitive enough. Is this person even worthy of coming into our unique situation? Everybody can't handle that.
Right.
Yeah, and that is the situation.
Right.
Yes, indeed. And when do you feel comfortable enough to take your ring off? And all those different conversations.
I wore my ring for a long time, and then I took it off, and I didn't wear it anymore. And then I started this other thing. I don't know what this is about. It's an unspoken bias with single parents, I guess, because seeing, you know, a single mom with kids.
People assume that you had your children out of wedlock. And so you started wearing your ring.
And you feel, you know,
treated differently based on their assumptions of how your children came into this world. Let's talk about it. Yeah.
And you don't even know my story.
Hello.
Right. I hadn't thought about that, but
So you wore your ring for a while. And
Well,
not
not
keeping your
for that,
name,
but I
too.
didn't realize
Yeah.
that I would face that stereotype. It was just something that came along after I realized. I'm like, really? So, yeah.
People make all kinds of gross assumptions. Yes, indeed.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm one, the book, and then also the nonprofit. I'm excited because it's oftentimes people, when they've gone through something, they use that as an area of strength for them to be able to do something to help someone else. So that does make me smile.
Yes.
You know, in the midst of everything that you and the family have gone through, to see that, hey, we're turning our tragedy into a triumph, and to be able to help others. So definitely kudos to you.
Well, thank you.
And what you're doing. And I know there have been some tough times, some tough nights, you know. But I always tell people, thank God we don't look like what we've been through.
Yeah.
And we wanted to have you at the table so people can see that you can go through something, you can get through something, and there's something on the other side. And it's not always a smooth transition. We all have to transition in different ways sometimes, but there's something on the other end that you have to keep pushing for it. And you will continue to have to push. And you said 5 years out, we could have this conversation 10 years out, and
Right.
we will always know that we're going to have to continue to push through.
Yes.
Exactly.
I can't wait to see what happens with your book and your nonprofit.
Thank you.
I think it's going to be very helpful for quite a few people because it's helped you.
Yes. Yes.
And
Thank
that's the
you.
goal. If you
Oh,
can
yeah.
help listen,
Yes.
that's the goal. That's the goal because people can see the work in you. Then that's where the message is right there.
Yeah.
And the messenger.
Yes.
Exactly. So
Yes.
definitely keep your faith.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we always encourage people to keep their faith because there's truly a blessing on the other side of everything that you're going through.
Yep,
So,
absolutely.
yeah. But thank you for joining us here at the
Yeah.
table. It's been good.
Yes.
We
Definitely
would
a
love to
great
have you
time.
back too,
Oh,
to
yeah.
have as you continue to walk through this process to see how that works.
I'd love to come back anytime.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Definitely. Well, I'm Dr. Richard Mason.
I'm Dr. Tamara Williams.
Thank you for joining us right here at the table on WHOB Smooth 88.1.
The essence of HU.
Keep your fork.
Someday we'll be able to measure the power of words. I think they are things. I think they get on the walls. They get in your wallpaper. They get in your rugs, in your upholstery, in your clothes, and finally into you.
Thank you for joining us at the table.
Tune in next Sunday at 1 p.m. for more delicious topical recipes for life on the Sunday Brunch.
On Smooth 88.1 WHOV.